clutch and the flywheel and the other bits we've just stripped off, got them on the bench just to have a bit of a look. So I've just started giving the flywheel a clean up, and to be fair, it's in really good condition. It just was caked in oil and grease, so I'm not finished with that. Carry on giving it a clean up, but it's really nice, so I'm quite pleased with that. The friction disc on the other hand, that's in a real sorry state, really saturated with oil and grease and dirt, and but we got a new one of these, so we'll be swapping that out, fresh one in. And then the actual clutch itself, this face again, this is all going to clean up really nice. It's just got a lot of oil and grease on it at the minute, so we'll get some clutch cleaner on it, get it all looking sparkling. Once we've changed the oil seal, this will be ready to go back in with a new friction disc, and hopefully then we've got a good brand new clutch in the car that should be good for many more miles. So we'll crack on with the oil seal next. Now, it doesn't always go smoothly, because that's the way jobs are. So, pulled my new clutch disc out, which I'd ordered from Superformance, as you can see here. This is the old clutch disc we've taken out, and this is the tool I bought from Hill Engineering. We can see that centres right. Over here, we have a problem. Now, I knew this was an aftermarket clutch disc, but obviously that's not gonna work for us. Not gonna fit. I have checked the part number that's on the packaging, and it is correct, and as what they say on their website, for manual cars only, remanufactured in Italy. So job's stopped at the minute. We're gonna have to make a phone call Monday morning when they're back open and see if we can sort this out. One way or another, we're going to need a new one that's correct for the car. I started to take the clutch assembly out once we got the gearbox out, but we're filming down there, it was a little bit dark, so I've taken things out and I've got them on the bench now, so I'll just show you what's what. So first thing was to take off start ring, nice and easy. 6 bolts holding that on. Then I think there was 14 or 15 bolts holding the clutch pressure plate on, and then the flywheel came off. I've marked everything with the orientations for where they go. We've got some new bolts to put the flywheel back on, and then we have the oil seal itself. So this is obviously what was leaking. What I've done, drilled a small hole in it, put a little wood screw in it, pulled the seal off without damaging anything. And then I do actually have a seal kit, sort of like for pushing seals in, but I didn't have anything that was this size. So what I did was put the new seal on, as you can possibly see, just around there. Put the new seal in, and then I used the old seal to actually knock it home. So that's all set up now and done. So the next thing is to go put the flywheel back on. I've got new flywheel bolts. I want to put some thread lock on these and then tighten them up. I think it's 82 or 83 Newton meters. I'll just double check that. Get this bolted in place, and then the new friction plate has come. So this is the original out of the car that's been relined by C&G Motorsport at Leeds, and we'll put it all together. I'll see if I can maybe show you on the bench. And the other thing that we have changed as well, in the centre of the crankshaft there, you'll see there's a little bearing that's been also replaced. The flywheel fitted, as you can see there. So that's the flywheel back in now. Got the bolts in Loctite. I've got a clean cloth. I'm going to get some brake and clutch cleaner now. Give that a good dressing up, and then we'll put the new clutch in.
get that all fastened up into place. So I'll let you see that in a minute. So I don't know well you can see this on the camera, but the pressure plate's back in place now, with the friction disc obviously behind it, and then there's 15 bolts going around the outside. Clutch pressure plate now fitted. I've removed the alignment tool, and they're all torqued up to 18 Newton meters. I've put this subframe back in, bolted it in on one side. So now to do the other side, you've basically got a couple of strange looking bolts for the top end, two more conventional ones, and then 4 cap heads to go in for there. Same on both sides. I've got that one sort of loosely bolted in, just need to bolt this one up now. So there you can see the clutch is all in. I've taken the centering tool on, and I've just loosely put the crown ring back on. So they're bolted down to 15 Newton meters. So I'm going to go around them in opposites now with torque wrench and fasten them up, and then we're ready really to get the subframe bolted in and start getting the gearbox into place once we've changed the bushings on the box. I need now to get the top bush out the gearbox, the top mounting bush. So I have these push and pull sets. So as you tighten the 2 nuts, it pulls the sockets together and should push one inside the other, pulling the bush out of it. Unfortunately, the bush is, when I measure it, is 76 mil in diameter, the outer diameter, and my set doesn't go big enough. But I found an 80 mil socket, so I'm going to use that as the cup on one side, and I've got a 75 mil cup on the other. So as I tighten this, should push the bush out and in to the socket, extracting it out of there, and then we'll use the same technique to put the new one in. And this is an updated one that's challenge spec, which I've got through Superformance, so it should be a lot stronger and a lot better. So that's what I've gone up to. So we'll get on with tightening this up and hopefully draw it out. Out. Time to put the new one in. It has got a leading edge, a little chamfer on it, so that's where we'll start that off. So we'll turn this round and drive it back in from the same way.
the deaerator head off the Ferrari, off the back of the gearbox. Now I want to use some of this stuff, which I've never used before, but it says it's good for aluminium and delicate metals as a paint remover. I'm going to paint some of that on, then I believe it takes roughly about half an hour, and we'll see how that gets on. So let's give that a try. Allotted half hour now, and let's see how it turns out. It says then to it should hopefully all wipe off, but products promise all sorts of things. Let's see how good it is. So we've had our first go with the paint remover, paint stripper. It's not done a bad job first time, so I'm going to give it another paint up, and we'll hopefully get the rest off and get it nice and clean, ready for painting tomorrow. So it's had its first coat of paint now. I'm not sure with the light how well this will come out on camera, but you can start to see the crackle effect coming up, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to give it a second coat now, and but this time I'll be going up and down it rather than side to side as per the instructions. But yeah, it's starting to look good just after the one coat. It's had a couple of coats now, been baking it on to dry, and I'm quite happy with the results. Looks really good. It's starting to come up, the crinkle finish. So yeah, as it puts back together there now, I mean it is baking hot, you can't touch it. And as I say, it should come back up with some more of this texture as it sets now over the next 24 hours. Right, I have the gearbox in place now. Got my engine hoist in. I'm going to get a jack underneath it. I want to lift it up sideways, twist it round, and then between the jack and the hoist reposition things, slide it forward, and then get it onto these studs. I think it's going to be a bit of a wrestle, and it's going to take some time, but we'll get there in the end. I've ended up taking the subframe back out and also removing the starter motor just to give myself some more room so I could get the gearbox in. I've now got it loosely on the studs, so I'll get some nuts on that and start putting it all back together. So watch this now. Got the box now in the car, but before I go any further and start putting the subframe back in and everything else, putting all the ancillaries and bits and pieces onto the engine, I'm going to just change the gearbox oil. So I've already loosened off the fill, and I've already loosened off the drain, and I'll just let that. I just let that drain out a minute. But I just wanted to talk to you about gearbox oil, because I got very confused about it, because there's a lot of information about the 360s about oil. So the original Shell oil, I believe, is obsolete, but there's people seem to recommend the red line. I couldn't get hold of the red line, so I've gone for this, as we can see, this royal purple. So yeah, 75 to 90 weight is what the oil should be. But then as I went on F-Chat and I looked at a few different things, there's people talking about whether you put friction modifiers in it, whether you don't put them in it, which one you have, and it got me so confused. And as I said, I decided on the red line because that seemed to be what everybody else wanted. But on trying to buy it, couldn't get it because of lockdown and nobody had any stock. But it just seems to be that people, it does seem to be a matter of opinion, because what you've got is a transaxle, so you've got your diff and your gearbox all using the same oil, and people seem to be arguing about which oil you use best, because whichever way you go it's going to be a compromise. One oil's better for the gearbox, one oil's better for the diff, and it's finding somewhere in between. So I went for that. That's what they recommend on their website as being for this car. People seem to say royal purple or the red line, so that's the way I went. Put it in, we'll see how it goes, and if I find out I'm getting any noise or winding or whatever from a diff, or I'm finding out that there's something else, I'll drop it and we'll try something else and I'll update you on that. But let's see how it goes. Apparently it'll make the shift a bit better, because it was before between sort of first, second, third a little bit notchy when it was cold, so we'll see if that's any better. Everything's now hooked up in terms of the gear linkages, brackets, the clutch, in terms of the hydraulic lines to it. I've been doing that while the gearbox has been draining out. I've been draining out for a good few hours to make sure we get every drop of oil out of that. So I'm going to fill that back up with oil now. Or get at least most of the oil in it, put the subframe back in, put the new bolt in, hold this up. Once the subframe's in and the gearbox is back being held by its own mounts again, I'll then attach the drive shafts and all the other bits and pieces. So job. Having never done it before, and obviously not being a Ferrari mechanic, I've had the subframe in and out 3 times, but but everything's now bolted up, so the subframe's bolted in. Our bolts through there on the upper mount. Now, one thing that did throw me was, obviously I've put new bolts in, new washers, new spacers. The old ones are just plain washers. The new ones are, as I showed you in the packet, a shaped rubber one. So they have to be actually on it when it goes up into the aperture where it sits. They're bolted up. Got new bolts and everything underneath for the bottom mount, which is the same as the top, just smaller. So everything's done. So I should now be able to let this off, get that out of the way. I'm going to push the car forward, give everything a good clean, and then we'll get back to bolting all the bits and pieces on, which is basically everything in reverse now. Oil pipes, a few sensors, and then we'll get back to fitting the exhaust on. So I'm going to fit my aerator, which I'm really quite happy about how that's come out, the crackle finish once we've repainted it. So I've got brand new seal to go on here. I'll take the tape off there, I'm going to just drop that back in. So I've just been around the engine, just fitting up the last of the few bits of brackets, making sure everything's torqued down, going through everything with a 1/4 inch torque wrench and a 1/2 inch torque wrench, torquing down every fitting to where it should be. And now I'm on with bleeding the clutch. So at the front here, it's a shared tank with the brake system. So I've topped that up to its maximum with new fluid, and then I've jacked the car up and took the wheel off, just so I can hopefully get the camera in and give you better access. But I'm using a vacuum bleed, on a manual vacuum bleed. So I've just gone onto the bleed nipple there. It's a 11mm spanner, just cracks that. Connected up to my little pot, and basically pulling the fluid through off my little vac gauge here. So I'll just put this down a second, and then I'll get that to show you. Hopefully you can see some bubbles coming through there. I'm not sure how well that'll show up on the camera. You can see it bleeding the air out the system. A little bit hard to do this one-handed and use the camera at the same time. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm doing. So I'll get the air bled out the system, and hopefully we'll be able to test the clutch then. I've put new drive shaft bolts in, so there is 2 stages to torque them up. It's 40 and then 78 Newton meters. The nuts around the gearbox are 56 Newton meters. Tightened all them up. Everything's labelled in the manual. The nut and bolt here for the gearbox mount, 98. Done the subframe. Can't quite remember what they were, but basically everything's been done in. Did have a bit of a disaster and had to get a new pipe, so we've had to wait till that come in, because I found the old one. If I just go over to here, I've got it on the bench. It basically started to crack. I noticed it before I put it all on, so had to get one of those, so that's delayed it a little bit, but that's all in now. So we're going to get the cats back in, get some oil put in the engine, and then hopefully should be ready to give it a start and see that everything's working, and then we can put everything else back together. I've loosely fitted the exhaust back up now. Reason being though, made a bit of an error with my order. I've got the new bolts, springs, everything else, but didn't get new nuts. So I put the old ones in. I've just loosely put everything together. I'm going to put oil in the engine now, and then should be able to fire it up. So I'm going to drop in. I'm going to put in 9 litres of this stuff. The engine will hold 10 litres, but you can only check, because it's a dry sump system, you can only check the oil when the engine's hot and up to temperature. So you'll check on that, but you'll see you put your engine oil in and you can have the full amount in. Check this when it's cold, and you'll be lucky if you even see anything on the bottom of the dipstick. So, but we can stick some oil in it and fire it up. Let's see where we've got some gears. So I had another little wait to get a few things going on the car. So there's been a few delays because of parts and different things. We had a mix up with the clutch, and then I've been away, came back. So really, from starting this job to where we're up to now with it back in and finished, you know, it's took a couple of months, but I've not been on it full time. But yeah, one of the other mistakes I made, ordered everything up for the exhaust system, all new clamps, gaskets, everything else, but didn't order the nuts. So they've arrived today. So I've got everything in loose, so I'm going to put the nuts on, tighten that all up, and then I did get a few other nuts and bolts and clips and stuff just to replace them to look a bit nicer. So once that's the exhaust bolted in, we've got oil in the engine now, so we should be able to then fire it up and then see whether our clutch works. The other thing I'm just going to mention is I did take the gearbox in and out twice. Initially when I put it in, I got a third party to, when I bled the clutch up, press the clutch, put it in gear, see if I could push it, and I couldn't push the car. I was rocking it backwards and forwards a bit, so I ended up took the gearbox back out, looked at it, still couldn't see anything wrong. Everything seemed to match the spec of the manual. Put the gearbox back in, did the same, still couldn't get it to move. So then I just thought, well, what's going on here? Anyway, got on it and gave it a real good push. Next thing, there was a little bit of a crack, and everything freed off of me. So I don't know if it was just, you know, because it sat for a little while not running, things had just stuck on. But yeah, then I could get it to push back. So now I'm happy that the clutch is engaging and disengaging. So once we get the engine running, we'll just double check that. But yeah, fingers crossed, we're all good on that side of things. And then I did show you bleeding the clutch. I did also, just as a double check, do it the old fashioned way as well, just to make sure we've got the air out, which we had. Getting a third party to sit in, pumping it while I worked the spanner just to bleed that out. But there was no air bubbles in the line, so there was no real need for that, but it was just belts and braces. Alright, okay, so yeah, I've bolted the exhaust in, not filmed it. So we've got the exhaust in, we've got the air boxes back on, the heat shields in, and basically replaced any nuts, bolts or whatever. I've only put this in loose at the minute, I'm going to sort that out, but we're in a position now to fire the car, and while it's on the axle stands, we can be a bit cheeky and maybe pop it into gear. So let's have a look. Check engine okay. Well, that's a good sign. We've got a running engine. Let's try a gear. And we have drive. Just check under the car for any drips or any leaks. Will look okay. Got the car back together now. The other thing I've not put on is the under tray and the wheel arch liners in. Bumpers are on, everything else is in. I had oil in from when I started it before, but obviously not been able to check the level, because you can only check that because it being a dry sump engine when the engine's hot. So what I'm going to do now, drop the boot down, take it out, just take it round the block, a couple of gears, bring it back, get the engine so it's nice and warm, and then top the oil off. You'll see it comes in, literally there's a drop on the very bottom of that dipstick, which is probably just from a bit of heat from when we had it just running before. But there's it would look like it's well below its minimum. Once this gets hot, it won't be far off where it should be. Just wants a little probably top up then. So we'll get running with that. I'll sort that out.